The film opens with Claire showing up in Berlin, Germany as a youthful female traveler. She strolls to her convenience, a lodging with bunking rooms, and goes through the evening celebrating for certain individuals, perhaps at the same time travelers, on the housetop. She takes photographs of the dawn and in the first part of the day dresses and takes her rucksack with her out touring. She buys some garments, photographs slides, and takes photographs in the road, one of a lady broadcasting a beautiful sheet out a condo window. She visits a bookshop and looks into a book of craftsmanships. Leaving the shop she follows out a man and they meet on the pathway holding up at a bunch of traffic signals. He drops his assets and Claire helps him, after which a discussion sparkles where he nonchalantly inquires as to why she's traveling solo and offers her a few strawberries. Claire goes with this man, Andy, to see the public nursery where the strawberries develop. They talk and get to know one another, Andy referencing it's a decent spot to convolute life, Claire rectifies and mull over life. Claire disregards a call from her mom. He drives her back to her convenience where they almost kiss. She welcomes him up for a beverage at the bar and he decreases. The next day Claire branches out touring again and searching for Andy, who she finds in a similar bookshop, taking a gander at the book of craftsmanships. They go through the day together. He drives them back to his place, which is extremely tranquil and ruined. His higher-up loft is concealed behind a locked constructing lobby, through a little encased yard into the structure block behind. They go through the evening and she discusses the amount she might want to remain as opposed to moving on to her next objective, Dusseldorf. In the first part of the day, he leaves for work, educating at a neighborhood school. One understudy, Franca Subtleties, a book the class was approached to peruse. Claire gets dressed, gets together a day pack, and goes to leave, finding she is secured in the loft. She can't see it as an extra key and furthermore observes the windows don't open. Accepting this a mishap, she hangs in the loft, making herself a few food and trusts that Andy will return. He gets back where Claire clarifies she was unable to leave and he understands he neglected to leave a key for her, which he finds in his pocket. She flippantly recommends, "Did you lock me in?" And he energetically answers, "Yes, sure, however in the future I'll attach you to the bed," and they have intercourse in the shower. They go out clubbing and she remains a subsequent evening. In the first part of the day when he leaves for work, he calls attention to the criticism he's left for her on the dresser. She nonchalantly looks around the loft while preparing herself breakfast and tracks down the book of fine arts from the bookshop. She opens it to her cherished page and finds a photograph of her snoozing with the word "mine" composed on her shoulder, resting in the pages. Irritated by this, she likewise understands her jewelry with her ring is missing. Her mom had given her the ring to pawn and get back on the off chance that she causes problems, yet it additionally has wistful worth. She looks through the loft and starts to freeze, finding the key won't open the entryway, her cell phone has no assistance, the other inner entryway is additionally locked, and none of the accessible windows open. Feeling in peril now, she attempts to break the window with a seat and tracks down a second, built-up board behind. At the point when Andy returns, she's holding up at the entryway and requests to leave, yet he won't let her past. He locks the entryway and advises her about the messed up window, advising her nonchalantly, assuming that she attempts to break the window he should line them up. Presently understanding the heaviness of the circumstance, she argues for him to release her, yet he excuses her interests and hands her blossoms and inquires as to whether she prefers pasta. Baffled at his madness, she blasts fiercely into a fury, attempting to kick and punch him, however he represses her and binds her to the bed, clarifying that nobody can hear her shouts, the structures are deserted. The camera works out to uncover her shouts are not heard from the road. The next day Andy visits his dad, who inquires as to why he was late. Andy says he met somebody and educates him concerning Claire. His dad gets some information about Natalie, the young lady he has been seeing, and Andy lets him know she got back to Canada. Andy gets back to the loft where he has kept on tying Claire to the bed on a plastic sheet. She is unfastened for a shower as she has peed on herself, and tracks down bunches of long light hair in the channel, acknowledging there has been somebody here before her. He brings her home a riddle and eagerly tells her he enlightened his dad regarding her and has messaged her mum that she is okay. Claire compromises that his mum will understand reality. He kept on overlooking her. The following day Andy leaves for work, passing on Claire loosened and allowed to meander the loft as she can't get away. We see him lock the keys in a lockbox and leave it on a rack in the structure passageway. Claire looks through the condo, tracking down a screwdriver under the love seat. At work, Andy is irritated at an instructor who utilizes his cup from the public kitchen. Awkwardly, the lady purges it and washes it out. He gets back to observe Claire doing the riddle. He helps her and she makes a move to cut the screwdriver through his hand laying on the tabletop, sticking him to the table. She snatches the keys and escapes down the flight of stairs and across the patio, yet a burdensome entryway jam, and Andy gets her and smashes her hand in the entryway as she escapes through the front structure, breaking her finger. He completes a pass Claire back to the condo. The next day he meets his dad. At the point when he gets back, Claire attempts to return serenity to the threatening circumstance. She keeps on arguing with him and lets him know she misses her mom, yet Andy tells her, there's no good reason for missing something you will not get back, and that she has him all things considered. Andy continually takes photographs of Claire at odd and upset stances, generally bare. The following day, Andy watches the female understudy, Franca in rec center class, stimulated. In the meantime, Claire endeavors to pick the entryway locks with a paperclip, snapping one off in the inside entryway, and stresses Andy will find her endeavor. We see that Andy has locked every one of the sharp devices in the lockbox with the key. He proceeds to insult and threaten Claire both intellectually and inwardly, moving between warmth, possessiveness, and savagery. Andy is washing Claire in the shower when Franca thumps at the entryway. Andy undermines Claire that assuming she says anything, he will kill the young lady. Andy answers the entryway and Franca plays with him, expressing she followed him home. Seeing Claire remaining in a towel in the foyer, Andy tells her she's his sweetheart and is horrible to her, so she leaves. Back inside the condo, Claire inquires about the young lady, asking her name, and Andy trims her hair, again capturing her. Later he finds the inside entryway won't open and gets cross with Claire. We see time elapse. It's currently Christmas. Claire is living in fear, yet as Andy keeps on playing with her, she starts to unwind and carry on. Andy at one direct asks her to be ordinary and gets brutal in his dissatisfaction at her conduct, passing on to remain with his dad. The power in the loft goes out and Claire is stuck for a really long time without power. It's freezing cold and she eats the little food she finds. Andy's dad kicks the bucket and upset, he holds up a couple of days to call the overseer, staying in his dad's house. Claire observes another young lady's toenail managing under the bed. Claire is mitigated when Andy gets back to the condo a couple of days after the fact. Andy knew nothing about the blackout and tells him she thought he wasn't returning. She comforts him about his dad's passing and they have intercourse. Claire starts warming to the circumstance, cleaning, cooking, trying with her appearance, playing music. Andy gives her a book and his dad's canine for Christmas. Claire asks the subtleties of for what valid reason he picked her, and he clarifies he saw her in the road checking out the lady broadcasting the sheet out the window, divulging that he had arranged their gathering in the bookshop. Claire gets some information about the past young lady, and we see an unexpected change in his friendship for Claire, irritated at her inquiries. Sometime later, he takes her from the loft into secluded timberland. He's conveying a hatchet. While Claire likes being outside, at long last he lifts his hatchet behind her. However, a youngster yells and runs over, interfering with, requesting to help his sibling who has harmed his leg. Shocked at their quality, Andy is occupied and Claire takes advantage of a lucky break to attempt to caution the other kid. However, he doesn't get English and is terrified by her earnestness. Andy sees and resents Claire. At the point when the mother gathers her kids, Andy drives Claire back to the vehicle and powers her into the boot, getting back to the loft. Andy, currently irritated at Claire's quality and envious of her relationship with the canine, takes the canine for a walk and doesn't get back with it, expressing it fled. Claire is distant from everyone else again and grief-stricken. While Andy goes to a New Year's Eve party, Claire breaks into the locked room, observing his camera, a back rub seat, and a photograph collection of Claire in imprisonment. Claire likewise tracks down a collection of another young lady, blonde, bound, and manhandled similarly. Andy endeavors to draw another youthful female traveler, starting discussion and utilizing a similar misphrasing he utilized with Claire, mistaking ponder life for remunerate life. However, the young lady leaves with her companion. Back in the kitchen, Claire sees a torchlight sparkling from one more condo across the yard and alarms the individual to her pain, shouting and crushing the fixed window sheet. A man arrives at the loft entryway, almost liberating Claire, yet Andy returns and kills him with a mallet. Andy insults Claire that it is her issue the man is dead and powers her to help wrap up the body, which he consumes in the coal pit on the patio outside. The next day, Andy tidies the blood and barricades the windows, rebuffing Claire. He sees a missing people advertisement in the nearby paper, with Claire's image, and bothered requests that Claire gathers her sacks since he is treating the loft. Claire sees understudy exercise manuals on the table that Andy is reviewing. She deliberately consumes her hand, and keeping in mind that Andy snatches some cream from the washroom, she buries Franca's exercise manual. The next morning, Andy tips out every one of the beverages and takes his and Claire's sacks, abandoning Claire in the loft. On the ground floor, he stashes Claire's sack in the cellar and switches off the lines, leaving Claire without water. At school, he gives out the exercise manuals and Franca observes a photograph of Claire bound and choked slipped between the pages. Without causing to notice her disclosure, Franca pardons herself from the study hall and escapes instantly on her bicycle. The photograph is found on the floor by different understudies and froze. Andy surges back to the condo, stalling out in rush hour gridlock. Andy observes Franca's bicycle outside the front structure and sees where she has broken in through a storm cellar window. He finds the mallet and the lock confine open the yard, and a window in the structure block open. The loft entryway is open and Claire is gone. He follows sloppy strides up the flight of stairs and we see him follow them past Claire stowing away in a flight of stairs cabinet. Similarly, as he arrives at the room where Franca is stowing away, Claire calls from the ground floor, attracting him back into the loft. Whenever he is diverted inside, Claire figures out how to get out and lock the condo entryway with Andy presently caught inside. An influx of euphoric help washes over Claire as she understands she is at long last liberated from the loft and Andy. Andy currently arguing for Claire to liberate him from the condo, she shouts in triumph, tossing the keys against the outside of the entryway, provoking Andy. She gathers Frank's and has observed a sack with her identification and her mom's ring. The last shots are of Andy unwinding in his back rub seat and Claire riding in a vehicle through Berlin, passing vacationers touring, partaking in her opportunity. To watch more video like this, click on the videos on your screen and don't forget to let me know how you feel about today's video in the comments down below. And at last I will say stay safe and stay healthy. See you next videos.